first bar. Now.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us acknowledge the arrival of His Royal Highness Dr. Sanusi II. Good morning, amongst us very eminent dignitaries who are with us here on conflict resolution. Please round of applause. Thank you very much.
We are saying glory be to the Lord God Almighty, because I know a good number of us in this room are either more than 55 or about 55. So we thank God. And now I'm going to deliver the DG's welcome address. And it goes this way. Royal Highness and special guest of honor at this very occasion, Alhaji Dr. Mohammed Sanusi II, CON, the Emir of Kano, a royal father, a patriot, and a scholar. Excellencies, representatives of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Excellencies, the Ambassador of China to Nigeria, members of the diplomatic corps, esteemed scholars, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We bring you peace greetings from the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. It is my honor and pleasure, on behalf of the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, to warmly welcome you to this anniversary dialogue commemorating the 55th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the People's Republic of China. This gathering is both timely and significant. 55 years ago, Nigeria and China laid the foundation of a relationship anchored on a mutual respect, sovereignty, and shared aspirations for development and global equity. Today, that relationship has matured into a comprehensive partnership that touches virtually every sector of Nigeria's national life, ranging from infrastructure and trade to technology, education, and people-to-people exchanges. As an institute mandated to advance peace building, conflict prevention, and strategic policy thinking, IPCR considers this dialogue particularly important. In a world increasingly defined by geopolitical competition, economic uncertainty, climate stress, and complex security challenges, partnerships such as Nigeria-China relations must be continually examined through the lens of peace, stability, and sustainable development. Nigeria-China relations have demonstrated how cooperation between developing countries can contribute to national development while reinforcing principles of non-interference and mutual benefit. Chinese-supported infrastructure projects, industrial cooperation, and development financing have played visible roles in addressing structural gaps within Nigeria's economy. Equally important is China's engagement with Africa, including Nigeria, within broader South-South cooperation and multilateral frameworks. However, anniversaries are not only for celebration, they are also moments for reflection and recalibration. This dialogue therefore provides a valuable platform to assess achievements, identify emerging challenges, and explore how Nigeria-China cooperation can better respond to contemporary realities, particularly issues of peace, security, youth unemployment, technology transfer, and inclusive growth. At the IPCR, we believe that sustainable development and durable peace are inseparable. Economic partnerships must be people-centered, conflict-sensitive, and aligned with national and regional stability goals. As Nigeria consolidates its role as a regional leader in West Africa and a key voice in Africa's global engagement, our relationship with China must continue to evolve in ways that strengthen resilience, foster mutual understanding, and support long-term peace. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Royal Father, guests of honor, and participants, your presence here today as policymakers, diplomats, scholars, practitioners, and private sector leaders underscores the importance of inclusive dialogue in shaping the future of international partnerships. I am confident that today's discussions will generate practical insights and policy-relevant recommendations that can further enrich Nigeria-China relationship in the years ahead. Once again, I welcome you all, and I thank you for honoring our invitation, and I wish us a productive, engaging, and forward-looking dialogue. Thank you, and God bless.
The celebration we are holding today is essentially courtesy of his father, who blessed the 12 in Nigeria and China relations. He was the first Nigerian ambassador to China. So today, we are honoring the great pioneering work he did. We are honoring the great pivotal work he did. He led the way in what China and Nigeria have become today. And even more, the prospects ahead. Welcome, Your Highness. Of course, His Excellency, Chad Dafe, we welcome you also, Ambassador Sariki, and all our distinguished guests, including political leaders like Otumba Showumi, His Excellency, Nigerian former ambassador to China, Odedidia, and of course, the representative of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. We would like to welcome you. The address will be short. It's been 55 years since Nigeria and China established diplomatic relations. It was then a unique moment for the two countries. Nigeria had just then concluded a civil war and is consolidating on the path to peace, national unity, and development. China then was on the verge of being readmitted to the United Nations, an international organization that it helped to found, but due to Western pressure, was almost kept away for quite many years. Nigeria, along with other 25 independent African countries, then joined more than 50 other countries. In total, 76 countries voted overwhelmingly at the United Nations Assembly to return China to her legitimate seat in the United Nations on 25th October 1971. And this is just barely 10 months after China and Nigeria established diplomatic relations. So Nigeria has had a store of goodwill for the People's Republic. And of course, the UN resolution 2752, that iconic resolution that readmitted China to the United Nations, became a diplomatic tradition and international consensus on one China principle, which Nigeria has mainstreamed into her foreign policy as one China policy. The core of it is recognition that Taiwan is inalienable part of China's sovereign and territorial expression. At 55 years of vigorous diplomatic exchanges, Nigeria has maintained one China policy, while China has also committed to the indivisibility of Nigeria. Beyond this important foundation, the two countries have forged intense partnership, establishing both strategic partnership and creating a unique process of sustainable dialogue, the Intergovernmental Committee. China established strategic partnership with Nigeria as far back as 2005. It simply means that Beijing has a lot of respect, and trust for Nigerian internal process and wish to consult with her on key issues, not only between the two countries, but issues around the world. It is a special honor from Beijing. In 2005, only 3 countries in Africa were given such recognition: Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa. Trade has grown significantly, reaching more than $25 billion last year, with even more impetus to soar. This year is pivotal for China. I need to stress the implementation of the 15th five-year development plan. China has been very meticulous in implementing five-year development plan since 1953. I have never left that path. And what you see today is not a happenstance. It is deliberate, it is followed diligently, and this 15th five-year development plan is very, very significant, not only for China, but for Nigeria, and for Africa, and for the world. China has pledged during this period to remove all domestic constraints to building a national unified market. Simply means China will be the single largest, biggest market in the world. Access to it is a sought after for every country in the world. In the past 1 month, it's almost like a pilgrimage to Beijing. From Paris to London, to Brussels, to Finland, Canada, it's all been way to China. It is not because of the love of China. It is for what China can offer. Let's be very clear about that. And at a certain point, we must put in ourselves where we don't need to be loved or hated, but just to be reckoned with. China has pledged to do this. In addition to building a national unified market, China has already provided a zero tariff entry to all products and goods coming from 53 African countries with diplomatic relations to China. That simply means economies can be restructured by simply paying attention to China market. With a stable market access, Nigeria is placed uniquely to ramp up exports and gain real values through steady flow of foreign exchange receipts. The new tax regime and successive withdrawal subsidy, in my view, seeks only to transfer money from one pocket to the other without creating new money. The basis for wealth of nation is continuous creation of values, not the circulating the existing values. No matter how you circulate the existing values, it will not be enough. Therefore, you must focus your policy on creating new values. And this is an offer Chinese food market has given to us. I hope we can design relevant policy instruments to fully engage the market that China is offering. I suggest an intense study of China's 15th five-year plan that will go into effect immediately after the convocation of the 2 sessions, China Parliamentary and Advisory Body in March. It is important that we pay attention to that important document. As an essential part of mutual learning and both civilizations for purpose of enriching our common effort and modernization, we should pay attention to each other's governance practices and extract lessons without any attempt to copy each other mechanically. What is the consensus driving China national development? Multi-party consultative practices. Nobody is left behind. In fact, nobody is an opposition. Everybody is a partner. Interestingly, the West we so copied in the West, opposition parties are partners. In Nigeria, they are literally enemies, and everybody knows what you do to an enemy. Sometimes drive him to the sea, and he also struggles to pull you down. We can build a process that is inclusive, consultative, in which everybody is a stakeholder. That way, we can build the relevant consensus to development. Since 1978 reforms and opening up, China has become the world's second largest economy, ended absolute poverty, first of its kind in all human history. First of its kind in all human history. This is not a statistical wonder. You can see it on the street of China, in the rural communities. Now is at the stage of rural revitalization. 1.4 million Chinese out of poverty, living in decent houses, access to basic means of livelihood. 96% coverage in health insurance. The elderly, the pensioners are well looked after. Recently, their pension take-home was increased by 3%. Of course, I want to talk about women, a subject that is dear to His Highness. In China, 690 million women of the population of 1.4 million are already part of the extant modernization process. 40% of the workforce, women. Half of internet starters, women. And essentially also, the cause of women has been very integral to Chinese modernization process. As His Highness is committed to lifting up women, China will be your good company. This year, next year, China will build an international center for capacity building for women, and has promised that in the next 3 years, over 50,000 women from all over the world will be trained through that center. Nigeria must not miss out in this important position. Chairman Mao said earlier that women hold half of the sky. Today is a reality. Women in China are holding half of the sky, even more. The statistics are very informative. 40% of the workforce. I do not want to make comparison, but check our friends across the Atlantic. How many of them have attained 40% of women employment in key industry? Lastly, since 1978 reforms, of course, whole process democracy of China has blossomed. Whole process of democracy simply means combining procedural democracy with substantive delivery of actual goods, improving people's livelihood. It's not enough to vote. When they are voting next time, they must be healthier, they must be better educated, they must be better fed. If you have them the way they come last time, I saw a lot of people struggling over electoral process. Who votes? Are people asphyxiated by extreme poverty, unable to make rational judgments and choose? Choice is not an easy thing. It's only possible in a state of rational mind. And rational mind is impossible in the context of terrible poverty. So we must focus on improving our people as a way of securing and widening the democratic space. Nigeria is actively participating in the Belt and Road process, and there has been quite a number of outcomes. I will leave this to our scholars. At 55, Nigeria and China are considerably accomplished in their bilateral cooperation, and now at a crucial historical starting point. This simply means that even though they have traversed a very productive trajectories and a very good example of mutually beneficial international relations, what is ahead is even greater. I will leave our eminent scholars to interrogate what is ahead. Thank you.
Director of the China Studies Center of Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, very good morning. It is an honor to attend today's anniversary dialogue. First of all, on the behalf of His Excellency Ambassador Yu Dunhai and the Chinese embassy at home, I would like to convey our warmest congratulations on this event, while also express our heartfelt thanks to friends who have long supported and championed the friendship between China and Nigeria. At this moment, we should not forget the pioneers from both countries who laid the foundation for our partnerships over past 55 years. In particular, the father of His Highness, the Emir of Kano, Sanusi II, namely Ambassador Aminu Sanusi, who served as the Nigerian first ambassador to China. Let us pay our highly respect to them. Thank you. On February 10, 1971, China and Nigeria established diplomatic relations, embarking on a journey of more than half of a century, marked by solidarity, mutual support. Yesterday, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and the Nigerian Foreign Minister Ambassador Yusuf Tugal exchanged congratulations message on this milestone, once again reaffirming that both sides will take the important consensus reached by the two heads of states as the guide, strengthening the alignment of development strategies and promote even greater development of bilateral relations in the new area. At this significant historical juncture, it is both timely and meaningful to reflect the remarkable path our two countries have traveled together in the past 55 years. For the past 55 years, China and Nigeria have been trusted friends who standing together through thick and thin. From the establishment of diplomatic ties to the formation of strategic partnership, and most recently to the elevation of all relationships to a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2024. Every milestone has rested on the principles of mutual respect and win-win cooperation. China has constantly supported Nigeria's efforts to safeguard national unity, peace, stability, and social harmony, while actively banking Nigeria's constructive role in promoting peace in West Africa and in Sahel region. Nigeria has firmly upheld the One China principle and constantly supported China on issues concerning our core interests and major concerns. Together, we will maintain close coordination on international and regional affairs and have emerged as a key force in global South cooperation. For the past 55 years, China and Nigeria have been development partners committed to mutual benefit and shared success. Our cooperation has yielded fruitful results across trade, infrastructure, energy, mining, health, and human resources development. I just use the opportunity to mark several landmark projects, including the Lake Deep Sea Part, the Zangro Hydropower Station, the Ayacucho Kaduna Kanu AKK natural gas pipeline, the Abuja Water Supply Project, and the railway modernization initiatives have injected powerful momentum into Nigeria's economic and social progress. Nigeria has become China's largest engineering construction market in Africa and a vital partner in trade and investment. In 2025, our bilateral trade surpassed $24 billion, a year-on-year increase of more than 28%, while China direct investment in Nigeria reached the $619 million, up 103% from the previous year. These features vividly illustrate the dynamic and vast potential of our partnership. For the past 55 years, China and Nigeria have been close brothers, united by deep people-to-people bonds. Exchanges in the education, culture, arts, and media has flourished. Flagship events hosted by both sides, such as Happy Chinese New Year celebration, the Chinese-Nigeria Film Festival, and the China-Nigeria Culture and Tourism Festival, has steadily deepened mutual understanding and affecting between all peoples. Traditional Chinese medicine and martial arts enjoy growing popularity in Nigeria, and the interest in learning Chinese continue to rise. Two Nigerian institutes house the Confucius Institute. 15 public secondary schools in Abuja feature Chinese corners, and the numbers of Nigerian students studying in China has exceeded 5,000 for many years running. Through mutual respect, equality, and dialogue among the diverse civilizations, our two ancient Asian nations have built a strong foundation of public support for the long-term, steady development of all comprehensive strategic partnership. Dear friends, standing at this new milestone of our 55th anniversary, China-Nigeria relations face even broader opportunity for growth. In September 2024, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu paid a successful state visit to China. All two heads of state jointly decided to elevate bilateral ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership, marking our relationships onto a fast track of high-level development. China attached great importance on its relationship with Nigeria and stands ready to work closely with Nigerian side, taking the opportunity 55th anniversary of the diplomatic ties and the 2026 China-Africa Year of Peoples-to-Peoples Exchange. As a fresh opportunities, we will implement the important consensus reached by all leaders, jointly advance modernization and build Sorry about that. Sorry, I believe you hear me. Yeah. Firstly, we will continue to deepen strategic mutual trust. China will uphold high-level exchanges as the guiding forces, fully leverage head-of-state diplomacy, and make the most of China-Nigeria intergovernment committee to promote cooperation at all levels and in all fields. We will firmly support each other on issues involving core interests and major concerns, including adherence to One China principle and the Nigeria fight against terrorism, while respecting each other's choosing development paths and strengthening coordination on governance, economic development, national security, and regional stability, and jointly solidify the foundation of all comprehensive strategic partnership. Secondly, we will adhere to the dividend of the shared development. China remains committed to openness, inclusiveness, and win-win cooperation. We will advance higher quality Belt and Road initiative cooperations, align the 10 partnership actions with President Tinubu's renewed hope agenda and Nigeria's 8 priority area of governance, and accelerate the implementation of zero tariff measures to expand cooperation across the board. China will actively promote the initiative on supporting African modernization, launched jointly with South Africa during the G20 summit last year in South Africa, and firmly support Nigerian industrialization and modernization efforts. We aim to strengthen Nigeria's capacity for self-reliant development and ensure that the benefits of our corporations reach the people of both countries in a more tangible and equitable way. The third, we will be jointly practice the true multilateralism. China is ready to work with Nigeria to uphold the international system with the United Nations at its core and the international order based on international law, while advancing reform and improvement of global governance. We will stand for fairness and justice, oppose unilateralism and bullying, and address global changes together. We will strengthen coordination in multilateral frameworks such as the United Nations and the BRICS. Resolutely safeguard the common interest and the development rights of global South countries, and actively promote global development initiatives
Global Security Initiative, Global Civilization Initiative, and the Global Governance Initiative. That means the 4 global initiatives is announced by Chinese President Xi Jinping. In this way, we will contribute China-Nigeria strength to building an equal, ordinary, multipolar world and an open, inclusive economic globalization that benefits all. Firstly, we will work together to promote mutual learning among civilizations. China stands ready to seize the opportunity of the 2026 China-African Year of the people's exchanges to build a multi-tiered, broad-ranging, and institutionalized framework for exchange. We will further expand cooperation in young education, culture, sport, media, tourism, and subnational health. We will support greater interaction among universities, think tanks, cultural institutions, as well as media outlets, and creating more platforms for dialogue. Through these efforts, we will deepen mutual understanding and appreciation of each other's history, culture, development paths, and governance philosophies, strengthening the social and public opinion foundation of all friendship, so that it endures for generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, there is a well-known Nigerian proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. In China, we have the similar saying: those who share the same aspiration do not consider mountain and sea as distance. Over more than half a century, the friendship between China and Nigeria has grown ever stronger and more vibrant. Looking to the future, our comprehensive strategic partnership will continue to open new horizons. China standing ready to work hard, hand in hand with Nigeria to implement the important consensus of 2 types of states, making even greater contributions of the well-being of our peoples to China-Africa cooperation and to building a community will share the future for mankind. This anniversary is not only a celebration of a past achievement, that's a call to shape the future with renewed purpose. That phrase I just taken from the message His Excellency Honorable Minister took up. In conclusion, may China and Nigeria enjoy lasting prosperity and development. May the friendship between China and Nigeria endure forever. And may this dialogue to be a complete success. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Affairs of the Embassy of China, Jules Mondieu, Director General, Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, the Director of the Center for China Studies. Permit me at this juncture to recognize 3 of my mentors: Ambassador Usman Serki, Ambassador Chuka Udedija, and Ambassador Ravi Dagari, who gave me a platform to grow in service. Representatives from ministries, departments, and agencies, distinguished guests, friends of China, ladies and gentlemen. As the compere mentioned in his introduction, I'm here to represent the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, who, because of the call of duty, is out of the country. And I'm here to read his statement as a dutiful civil servant. So I begin by reading the minister's speech as directed. It is an honor and privilege to address this distinguished gathering as we commemorate 50 years of diplomatic relations between the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the People's Republic of China. This milestone invites us not merely to honor our shared history, but also to chart a forward-looking partnership aligned with the development aspirations of our two great countries. The theme of today's dialogue, China's zero tariff treatment and the implications for structural transformation and diversification of the Nigerian economy, speaks to a moment of genuine possibility. It challenges us to imagine a future where trade is not simply an exchange of goods, but an exchange of opportunities, where market access becomes a bridge to industrial strength, and where cooperation becomes a catalyst for shared prosperity. Excellencies, since 1971, Nigeria and China have built a partnership that has grown in confidence and complexity. What began as a solidarity between two developing nations has matured into a strategic relationship that spans infrastructure, technology, investment, and trade. China stands today as one of Nigeria's most significant partners. Nigeria, in turn, remains a vital anchor for China in Africa, a nation of scale, ambition, and unyielding entrepreneurial spirit. Your Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, China's zero tariff treatment is more than a policy gesture. It is a signal that the global trading system can evolve in ways that lead to developing economies, strengthen South-South cooperation, and open new pathways for inclusive growth. For Nigeria, it offers a timely opportunity to accelerate the diversification of our economy and deepen our participation in global value chains. By lowering barriers to the Chinese market, zero tariff treatment creates new incentives for Nigerian producers in agro-processing, textiles and apparel, leather, solid minerals processing, and other value-adding sectors. It encourages us to move boldly from exporting what we extract to exporting what we create. It invites us to transform raw potential into refined prosperity. Your Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, however, we are clear-eyed and focused. Opportunities do not convert themselves into outcomes. Nigeria must confront the constraints that limit export competitiveness, from infrastructure and logistics to standards, certification, and market intelligence. That is why the Nigerian government is advancing reforms in import efficiency, trade facilitation, export financing, and quality assurance. We are laying the foundation for a more competitive, more resilient, and more export-ready economy. Yet, even these efforts will not be enough without deeper cooperation. To unlock the full promise of the zero tariff treatment, Nigeria and China must strengthen collaboration in productive investment, technology transfer, and capacity building. Our trade has grown, but it remains imbalanced. The zero tariff treatment offers a platform to shift that balance, not through rhetoric, but through results. And we see this opportunity not in isolation, but within the broader vision of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. A stronger Nigerian productive base will not only enhance our access to the Chinese market, it will position Nigeria as a manufacturing and export hub for West Africa and the continent. In this way, the benefits of our partnership can radiate far beyond our two nations. Your Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we look to the future, let us reaffirm a simple truth. Partnerships endure not because of history, because of shared purpose. Nigeria and China have such a purpose: to build industries, to create opportunities, to uplift our peoples, and to shape a future defined not by the limitations of the past, but by the possibilities of tomorrow. Long live the partnership between the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the People's Republic of China. Long live the spirit of cooperation that turns potential into progress. And long live the resolve of our two nations to rise together. I thank you for your attention.
What we in the academia call, or who we in the academia call, an intellectual elephantine, His Royal Highness Dr. Muhammad Sanusi II, CON, ML. Please a round of applause for His Highness.
Thank you. Permit me to begin by wishing our Chinese friends in advance a happy Chinese New Year. And maybe you haven't noticed, but the Chinese New Year this year begins on the first day of Ramadan. So and it's the year of the fire horse, I think. We're coming out of the year of the wooden snake. So we look forward to some excitement. So when I was asked to come and participate at this event, I was very pleased, and I said, of course, it's been mentioned that my father was Nigeria's first ambassador to China. And having what I'll do now is just spend a few minutes and talk about Nigeria-China relations through the lens of my eyes. I'm sure Ambassador Usman Sarki will give a lot of the detailed intellectual and diplomatic relationship. And just to go to the very end before I start, we'll probably end up saying that it's work in progress and there's still unfinished business. I was in a boarding primary school in Kaduna in 1971, I think, where we all heard on the radio that my father had been appointed Nigeria's first ambassador to China by General Yakubu Gowon. And I think for us as a family, it was somewhat of a big... Now, again, it tells you how far China has come. At that time, China was a hard spot to go. My father had just served as High Commissioner in Canada, Ambassador in Belgium, and to think he was going to some far-away, poor communist country with more than 700 million people living in poverty. If you saw the pictures of Beijing at that time, it wasn't any different from any of the GRAs you have in northern Nigeria. It just tells you how far a nation can come in 5 decades. From an economic perspective, if you just remember where China was when Chu and Lai started the opening up. In 1975, China had 8 million university graduates. Within 40 years, they had 300 million. In other words, you have more graduates in China than the entire population of the United States of America. In 40 years. World poverty has more than halved. The bulk of that came from China lifting 700 million people out of poverty in 30 years. Now, my earliest memories of, and I never got to China when my father was there. That's another story I'll talk about. But one of my earliest memories is my father talking about his reception in China. At the time, he went there, it was still towards the end of the Cultural Revolution. Chairman Mao had, at that time, what they called a hierarchy of civilizations. So you had the Asian civilizations, then the African civilizations, and the Latin American civilizations, the European civilization, and the United States was actually the most barbaric in the hierarchy. As a young country, China thinks, obviously, in centuries. Okay, I remember recently there was a story that was not told and retold of a United States diplomat asking a Chinese foreign minister in the 1970s what he thought was the impact of the French Revolution on the world. And he said, the French Revolution, that was 200 years ago, is too early. Because China thinks in thousands of years. So 200 years, it's too early. So, and that's really the mindset that you have. So my father got to China. Coming from Africa, he was promoted right to the front of the diplomatic list to see Chairman Mao, taken a special train, given special treatment. And at that time, the United States and China had established relations at the level of representative. They didn't even have a consular reps. But even then, the Americans knew how important China was. The United States rep, who was the most junior diplomat in the diplomatic corps, so coming after the ambassadors and the chargés, so that he'd be the last, had a small bungalow, one car, one driver, always at the end of the row, of the line. The US rep was George Bush. From being a US rep in China, he turned up as the Director General of the CIA. The Chinese rep in America became the foreign minister. I mean, again, so it was, and it just, so I think this is also important for the young diplomats that we have. Nations, posts are important for strategic purposes. So you had somebody like George Bush, who was so high up there because China was so important. America sent their most experienced and trusted intelligence officer to be the most junior diplomat there. And China sent theirs to America. Now, if you send a diplomat to an African country that is strategic, he would rather go to Paris or London or because they're after the glamour, not the strategy. So just also a learning point for me. Now, fast forward, my father in 1975 came back from China to be the permanent secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs. And I believe very profoundly that China and his stay in China influenced the mindset with which he came to the foreign ministry. Because coming straight from China, he came with a passion that fit the ideology of General Murtala Mohammed, whose 50th anniversary of assassination we're looking at this week. I think tomorrow there's an event. But this was what you'd call the golden period of Nigerian foreign policy. This was the time Nigeria certainly took the lead, pushing for the independence of Southern Africa, the complete decolonization of Africa, and the push against apartheid. So the whole idea of fighting for the independence of Mozambique, Angola, Rhodesia, which became Zimbabwe, and finally South Africa really took off at that time. And personally, I think sitting as a secondary school student with my father every week and listening to him, I think because my father was not somebody you'd call a radical initially. I mean, being a prince, going to Oxford, serving in Western nations, trained by the British. But those 3 years in China must have done something to him, because well, he was nowhere near as radical as me, but pushing the entire anti-colonial foreign policy, I think. So I think China, directly or indirectly, had an influence. The whole mindset of being there, the whole idea of being proud of your identity, the Chinese identity and the African identity. And you can imagine for an African diplomat coming from an environment where serving in countries where Africans were seen more or less as second-class citizens, to go to a great civilization that suddenly sees you as a leading civilization, in what it does to your confidence, what it does to your identity, what it does to your sense of purpose. So we have a lot to thank China for. When I became governor of the central bank, I'm happy to say I was the first African central bank governor to announce that we'll take the Chinese renminbi as part of our reserves. Nigeria was the first country to do that. And this was long, long before. Now everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. I remember when I announced it in Abidjan. Before I came back, I had 2 requests for meetings. One was from the IMF, the other was from the Chinese embassy. And both wanted to understand what I was doing. The IMF, of course, was not very pleased at that time, because the Chinese currency was not part of the SDR currency. And I said, look, it is inevitable. China is the largest manufacturing country in the world. The Chinese were shifting ideologically in terms of economics from a growth model that was driven by exports to a growth model driven by domestic consumption. When you've got these rising levels of income, when you've got this millions and millions of middle class within your borders, you really don't need to be looking for markets outside. So my view at that time was that the renminbi would strengthen the incentive to keep the renminbi managed at a perpetually low level to promote exports was no longer there, because the growth was going to be driven largely by domestic consumption. So whether the world liked it or not, the renminbi would have to be part of the SDR. And whether the Chinese liked it or not, given the role they had in the economy, the renminbi was going to be a convertible currency. So we said we put 10% of our currency in renminbi, and I'm happy we took that decision. The whole world is now coming, and now we move into a multipolar world, and the issues we foresaw over 10 years ago are coming to pass. And the Chinese ambassador came and also wanted to understand. And I said, look, we're not asking you for anything. We're simply saying we'll put renminbi as part of reserves. We'll allow our Nigerian businesses to open letters of credit in renminbi if they want, and they don't have to go through the dollar, because a lot of our imports were coming from China. But to import from China, we had to move from the naira to the dollar, and from the dollar to the renminbi, when in fact you could just go straight to renminbi. And the Chinese are very efficient. So within a few days, I had an invitation from Governor Zhao, who was one of the longest-serving governors of the People's Bank. He's now, I think, a vice chairman of the People's Consultative Assembly. So we went to the People's Bank, had an interesting conversation, and we had a 2-hour meeting in which he actually told us that the Chinese government was thinking along the lines we were thinking, but obviously what we did, and then Brazil, and then South Africa, more or less fast-tracked the process of opening up of the currency. And from there, we went to the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. We set up We actually invested in Chinese bonds at the dim sum market, and therefore built a relationship. One of my dreams at that time as governor of Central Bank was we would, which is now happening in some places, was we would sell crude oil to China and receive payments in renminbi, not in dollars, to build up the reserves, and then use the renminbi to import goods from China. So maybe I was 10 years ahead of my time, but this is where we are today. Okay, the whole process of de-dollarization, the whole process of knowing the risk of being totally dependent on one currency, one global currency. There was absolutely no reason for it. I have nothing against the Americans. I don't see why the dollar has to be the only currency for international trade, given the fact that America is not the only producer out there. So if you take a long arc view of history, you could see where the world was going, you could see where China was going, you could see where you should locate yourself as a country in the whole sphere of global geopolitics. When I became Emir, I thanked the Chinese. Before then, on a personal note, when I had decided, of course, I wanted only one term as governor of Central Bank. And what many of you don't know is I applied, and through the Chinese embassy, actually obtained admission and a scholarship to go to the University of Beijing in 2014 to study Mandarin. But the moment I left the government central bank, I became Emir. So I haven't yet studied Mandarin, but don't be surprised if in a few years you see me in China studying the language. I never give up on dreams, okay? I don't know how I'm going to learn it, but it might be. Anyway, so I became Emir, and the Chinese embassy arranged these annually actually, every year for about 3 years. The Chinese Africa Friendship Association arranged trips for me with a delegation from Kano to go to different provinces in China. Initially it was a cultural trip, and I said, look, I'm an economist. I love culture, and I would love to get to know about Chinese culture, but I have to go and come back with more than culture. If China is the biggest economy in the world. And we had actually started discussing with Chinese companies, trying to attract Chinese investments into Nigeria. By the way, Kano is probably the only emirate in northern Nigeria that has a Chinese as a title holder. We have over Kirin in China. I don't know whether you know him. He sits and he comes to the court, he wears the turban, you can see, and he rides with us in the Durbar. Okay? He's a title holder. I really was interested in attracting Chinese investments to Kano. And I think Nigeria is losing an opportunity by not, and that's why I now talk about an unfinished business. That process was stopped, and the Chinese have not offered to start it again, and so I don't know whether it's going to continue. But if I think of when I was working in the bank as a young credit officer, when Nigeria had the booming textiles industry, average wages in China were about $100 a month. And therefore, it was a matter of time, with the improvements in Chinese infrastructure, for Chinese exports to be much, much cheaper than Nigerian produced goods. And when you now have an open economy and you do not protect domestic industry, you and I know that a lot of what used to be produced in Kano today is imported from China. From textiles to fabric to shoes. Now, it's good for Chinese businesses. It's not the best for the Nigerian economy, because we would like to produce. Now, today, wages in China are about $500, $600 a month. these low-value industries the Chinese are getting out of, and they're exporting these low-value industries, taking them out of mainland China. The Chinese are moving into high-tech, they're producing computers, chips, and electronics. They're moving textile production to places like Madagascar. We're seeing coffee and leather works in places like Addis Ababa. There's a whole leather industrial estate outside Addis Ababa, where the Ethiopians used to export red glue, like us. Now the Chinese are producing high-quality shoes and bags for the best European brands in Addis Ababa, and the value that has gone to the Ethiopians. We need to think strategically about our relationship with China and sit with them and see how do we move these production facilities from the mainland to Nigeria. With the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, if we are not careful as a country, the Chinese will come and set up factories in Cotonou, in Accra, and be producing not for the market in Benin, which is very small, but for Nigeria. So the Republic of Benin, the Republic of Ghana, will have all the value added, will have all the employment, the income, the taxes, and will continue to be the consumers. We need to make sure, since we are the biggest market for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, we need to make sure that we are the hub for manufacturing and production. So we produce in Nigeria, sell in Nigeria, and export to West Africa, rather than remain here with our youth unemployed, with our manufacturing sector moribund, while we continue to consume goods that we used to import from China, but we're now importing from Accra and Cotonou. This is a message that I hope the government will think about seriously as we talk about economic diplomacy. I'm now very careful about advising government, because you advise them and you get into trouble. But I hope it's something that, but it is a strategy. If we don't do this, we make a huge strategic mistake. A few years ago, I did an analysis on the number of Chinese companies coming to West Africa. And the number of companies going to Ghana was 4 times the number coming to Nigeria. Think about that. We are more than 50% of West African GDP. We are 70% of the population. We are now the 3rd largest economy in Africa. We used to be the first with all the devaluation, although we're 3rd after South Africa and Egypt. We have just overtaken Algeria this year. We're number 4. Our GDP is finally beginning to grow faster than population. The potential is there, but economies don't grow by accident. You have to plan for it. And we need to actually have a serious diplomatic engagement that is aimed, and the focus is, yes, fine, you can come and build the ports. You can come and build the airports, come and build the roads, that's fine. We have no objections. But what we want more than anything else is come and build power plants, come and build factories, employ workers, produce goods in Nigeria, and then pay taxes, and then you can repatriate your profits. That is the win-win situation. I wrote an article on this when I was governor of Central Bank in 2013 in the Financial Times of London. My friends in China were not happy, and I said, look, I love China, but I also love Nigeria. And I think we can have a win-win situation. I do not believe that any economic policy that is aimed at turning Nigeria into a consumer nation without production is in the long-term interest of Nigeria. The problems we have in the north come from the deindustrialization of northern Nigeria. There are no factories. There are no factories. Plastic shoes we import. Leather, we import. Textiles, we import. So, and there is nothing here that we cannot do locally. Rice, we import. We're importing our food. So let us sit down and have a clear, focused diplomatic strategy, diplomatic engagement. If the Chinese are kind enough to restart this process that we stopped, I would also be happy to continue, because what I do when I go there is I go as Emir of Kano, but I'm a former governor of Central Bank of Nigeria. So I go to China and say, come and invest in Nigeria. Because I really am sad to see China come and set up production in Africa, and Nigeria is not the #1 destination. But I'm also sad if they come to Nigeria and they're going to Lagos and not to Kano. Okay, so, but if they're not coming to Kano, let them come to Lagos or Enugu or Aba or somewhere. That is still better than going to Accra or Cotonou or Addis Ababa. And I think we need to look at it. So for me, this is, I think, my father once wrote an article in one of your journals. He called it the unfinished business. It wasn't about China, it was about the foreign ministry. But that term, the unfinished business, I think is something you apply to most of the strategic diplomatic relations that we have. We're living, we talk about exciting times. I think Ambassador Sanusi was at a forum where I spoke last week and said, look, I think we have lived in exciting times since I was born. Every time is a challenge. We think we're facing challenges this year, but as far back as I can remember, there have always been challenges. Just a fight against colonialism, then a fight against apartheid, then you've got neo-colonialism, then you've got Boko Haram, then you've got this, there's always one problem after the other. This is no excuse. The job of diplomats is not to be buried in the darkness of today, but to say, where is the light and how do we find it? With this, let me thank the organizers for inviting me. I don't know if I was supposed to give a speech, but obviously you invite me, you've got to listen to me. But I'd like to thank China for all the good work they've done. I'd like to thank the Foreign Ministry for doing this, and I would like us to continue, especially at this time. At this time, we're all seeing the geopolitics move. We've seen America, we've seen Trump, we've seen NATO, we've seen what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, we've seen the Middle East. The entire world seems to be unraveling the world as we knew it. The things that we're all taught were the values that we should aim for are gone. Democracy, respect for the votes of people, international law, sovereignty of nations. And where is the island of stability today in the world? It's China. It's China. You cannot ignore it. Even the Americans are not ignoring it. Let us take advantage of that. Let us be there ahead of the Ghanaians, ahead of the Benue. I'm telling you, before you know it, if we do not move, these our younger brothers will get there ahead of us. I hope it will not happen, and have a good evening. Have a good day. Thank you.
Ambassador Degari and others were brought together by fate and fortune